Well, why are there so few women in certain fields like computer science or comedy? If you ask Milan Kanazawa, that's because men and women have different brains. But that's, maybe you want to critique that idea. Maybe you want to show that gender bias is a big part of the problem, if not the whole problem. Well, here's some paragraphs with some data that can get at this idea. Paragraph set one, we see the same topic. We're looking at the tech community, and we're noting that female tech founders have experienced sexual harassment. Here, in paragraph set two, we see the same topic again, blind interviews. And really the same main idea that they can be a really great way of reducing bias and creating diversity. So the topics are the same in each set, but the data is quite different, right? When you look at the data here, you see what we'll call quantitative data. Quantitative meaning it's measurable. So that can include something like the total number of people, the percentages of people who said or did something. And we see some more examples of that here. Paragraph B in each set contains what we'll call qualitative data. It's not something you can measure, but it has a feel, right? This could include stories, anecdotes, quotes, or just descriptions, the way people say that something is for them, what their experience is like. Now, each type of data is persuasive in its own way. When I ask students which paragraph has the more persuasive data, this is what they tend to say. Some of them will say, well, paragraph A is more persuasive because it shows that it's a widespread problem, right? Paragraph B only shows what happened to a few people, so you can't generalize it, and that's a valid point. But people often talk about paragraph B and say that they find this more persuasive because it's somehow more impactful, it gets your attention more. Some of these stories ultimately are more memorable than the numbers, right? So the takeaway here is maybe obvious that why not just give both types of data, right? The quantitative to show that it's a real trend, and then the qualitative to help people relate to it. When you look at sources, you find that different types of writers and different types of sources tend to get you each type of data. For instance, take a look. All these numbers that we're seeing here, they came out of a primary source. It was basically a survey about startups, original research. All these stories of harassment, they came from New York Times, right? The work of a journalist, someone who might be used to, might be thought of better as a secondary source, right? But this is a trend that we see again and again. An analogy for student writing here is this sandwich. By the way, if you're ever bored, I encourage you to just do some web research for worst sandwich ever. This is one of the entries that I would like to submit. You can see here that there's really not a whole lot of sandwich fixings, and there's a whole lot of bread. Well, in this analogy, this is a student paragraph. The fixings here are the data, and the bread is just abstract repetition of the main idea. I see a lot of paragraphs that look like this. There's a single statistic just buttressed between like 5 or 6 sentences that basically say the same thing. Students, in my experience, tend to rely a lot on quantitative data. They find a few statistics or facts and they try to turn it into an essay. Well, that might be enough quantitative data. The solution here is you just fill this paragraph up with qualitative data. Here's your main idea. Here's a statistic about it, and here's 3 stories that demonstrate the claim, right? And that's the thing. When you look at professional journalists, this is something that they do quite well. They can take something like a global story about the economy, but they bring it to life with stories about real people doing real things. Before we learn about the housing crisis, let's hear about one person who lost his home, and that's going to make it relatable to all of us, and that's something we can all work on doing in our own writing.